watching the Original Music Podcast. With your host, Raymond Hemms.
Friends will come, friends will go. You take a cake, try to take my soul. Tried to be your friend, but now I quit. Even your dog is a little bitch. A little bitch.
Well, let's fire this thing off. Here we go. At episode 67 tonight, we have Engines of Ruin, which is a band out of Nashville, Tennessee. I got Mark K. Anders tonight. How you doing, Mark?
Doing good. How you, man?
I'm doing good. Is the weather in Nashville rainy and dreary like it is here in Atlanta right now?
It is today. Yeah, I got a little bit of stuff done outside this morning that I needed to do, and then the rain rolled in. I said, well, good time to quit.
Yeah, exactly. I like when the rain tells me to stop.
That's right.
Yeah, I did the same exact thing. I had a little break in between gigs today, and I came home and started leaf blowing, and that turned into, mowing the grass and sucking up the leaves and getting everything ready for summer. So I'm ready to go. So what part of Nashville are you in? Are you down near downtown? Or are you outside the town? Where are you at?
I'm out in the boonies. I'm in a little town called Bell Buckle. I'm about an hour south of Nashville.
Okay.
So yeah, not right in the
thick
not
of
right in the heat of it, but
Yeah.
just close enough that I can get there if I need to.
Yeah. Did you say Belt Buckle?
Bell
Bell
Buckle.
Buckle. Okay.
Yeah.
Bell Buckle, Tennessee. That's a cool name.
Yeah, Belt Buckle would be cool.
Yeah, Belt Buckle.
Bell.
I think that
Bell Buckle.
that might be a town in Texas, more likely.
Yeah.
So, well, tell me about everything. Engines of Ruin. You guys have kind of just started getting this thing up and running. Give me a little bit of the background on, why you wanted to go out this route with rock and that kind of thing.
Well, I've always been a rock guy. I guess I cut my teeth, so to speak, on which it probably leaks out. I'm sure it can't help but leak out in the music that I do. I think I'm very heavily 70s influence.
Yeah.
I've always been into, Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Sabbath.
Yeah.
I started playing guitar because I wanted to be Ace Frehley when I was a kid.
Me too.
Yeah. So, I came up with that. And then, I guess, the 70s and the 90s are kind of my big influences because to me, a lot of the hard rock bands that really had success in the 90s were it was almost like the 70s were back again.
Yeah.
You listen to Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and all those guys, you can hear all those 70s influences in their stuff. So, of course, all that stuff spoke to me. And I just about 3 or 4 years ago now, I had been out of music, doing anything serious in music for a while because just, I'd done music for years and years and reached a point where it's like, well, I'm going to do something else for a while. I was,
Sure.
Tired of dealing with people and just the whole scene and got out of it for a while. And then here about 3 or 4 years ago, I finally got a DAW and a computer recording set up and got bit by the bug hard when I got into that. Once I got into the quote unquote modern technology, you and I, before we got on, you were mentioning, back in the 4-track days, the 4-track cassette machines and stuff, and I came up doing all that kind of stuff. And of course, getting into the current thing with the power that that a
Computer.
digital audio workstation has nowadays. It just totally bit me again. I started just writing like crazy again. And of course, once I started doing that, then I wanted to get the stuff out there. So,
Right. Did you find that there was a learning curve? You know, like I'm in my 50s, so I've been through this whole game basically since 87. So I've seen it come from, the 4-tracks and cassettes and all that kind of stuff to getting a really underpowered PC computer because it actually burns a CD. So cool. And that's, and then from there to where we are now, it's just leaps and bounds as far as the technology goes. What was your learning curve as far as, figuring out how to record your instrument and edit and mix and everything on the computer? Did you find that fun or was it painstaking?
I would say probably, I guess for me, it was probably 90% fun and, 10% frustration, because I picked up on it fairly quick. It took me some time to start figuring out, better. Of course, the initial thing was just, learning the software and getting around on it. And once I kind of started getting that going, it was more of a, which I feel like I'm still learning stuff on it every day, but it took me a little time to start getting something down that I felt like actually sounded halfway decent. For a while it was just experimenting, like, well, what if I record it this way? And what if I record it that way? And what if I do this or that in the mix and what have you? I got into which, some of your listeners, if they're into the whole recording thing, they might find this helpful. If not, maybe just interesting. And of course, some of them are probably already into those kind of communities. I got into a production and mixing community that Warren Hewitt does out of California called Produce Like a Pro.
Oh, yeah.
And I found that very, very helpful to me to speed up the process, because in that particular community, they provide multi-tracks that people can mix, but also you can do your own thing and submit those to the community. And different people in the community will respond, well, you ought to check this out or check that out.
Yeah.
Your snare drum sounds like it needs this or that, or just whatever they hear. And I just found it really, really valuable to get extra ears on what I was doing.
Now, was that on Facebook or what? How did you?
That is through. They do a YouTube
channel.
Yeah, YouTube channel. Like every week they'll do they call it Feedback Friday, and they'll pull up different people's mixes and everybody will comment on it, and Warren will, kind of the chief guy, Warren will comment on it and that kind of thing.
Now, is that a live stream? Is that done real time?
Yeah, it is. Now you do have to, which, it's a nominal fee. It's not a super expensive thing. You do have to actually be a member of the community in order to be able to access. I think you can get some of those on replay,
Right. Yeah.
is made available, but to actually be in on the live stream itself.
Yeah.
But there's several communities like that out there. I found that to be a really good one.
Oh, that's brilliant though. It's group wisdom class.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you probably shaved off 5 years of a learning curve, in this game. The first thing that I realized recording digitally when I went from my 16-track reel to reel was you can't put in the hot signal like you used to put into tape, because, you would get tape saturation and you kind of like that on tape.
Right.
In digital world, likey, it's not good at all.
And to this day, I still tend to record too hot. I don't, obviously I don't record where I'm clipping, but, I get into the situation where when I start mixing all the tracks together,
Right.
then I have to start turning the main bus down because
Yeah.
I recorded all the individual tracks,
Yeah.
really hotter than they need to be. That's a hard habit for me to break.
Sure.
But
Yeah. Now you said Studio One is what you're using. That's a Personas product.
yeah.
Yeah. Is that that is a DAW that uses VSTs and AUs, I think, where
It may,
AAX is Pro Tools.
yeah, it may allow you to do the AAX stuff too. I think I just use just VST stuff in
Right.
it. I think
Yeah. Are you Mac or PC?
PC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, did you build a computer or did you buy something hot rod out, and then use it for it?
No, I just bought one, and actually, I didn't know.
Yeah.
When I first started getting this stuff, I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I actually just went on Amazon and got like the most powerful refurbished computer that I could get.
Yeah.
And, really got it pretty cheap. And
Yeah.
it just so happened that it works fine. It's really got enough power for what I'm doing.
Sure. Sure. You're just doing audio at this point. Are you doing any kind of video editing?
No, I'm not really doing, well, I do just real basic, but I'm not doing any like full powered, like video editing yet.
Yeah. So the name Engines of Ruin, how did you come up with the band name? And was it one of those things where you're like, is this taken? Is this taken? As far as domains, whenever you're coming up with band names, it's always like, so many band names are taken or, how did you find the name? What's it mean?
I guess it kind of means nothing and means everything at the same time. I really don't even know. I can't tell you exactly when or how it popped into my head, but I thought it sounded cool.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know. In some ways, I would just rather let the audience, let the name means whatever it means to them instead of telling them what I think it means, because I kind of vacillate on what I think it means anyway. It means different things to me on different days, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did exactly what you're talking about. I thought, well, that could be a cool name, and then started searching to see if I could use this, if there wasn't already 6 bands out there that was using that name.
Yeah, exactly.
Turned out, I could get the .com and I could get the Facebook page, and I thought, well, that's a pretty decent name, and the stuff's available, so let's go with it.
Yeah, and what platforms are you on? Obviously Facebook, and I saw X, I think.
No, I'm not on there yet. I'm on basically Facebook and YouTube for the most part.
Right.
I guess that's where I'm at. And then, of course, the web, we got our own website.
Yeah.
But primarily Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm considering actually starting to put episodes on X, because why not?
Yeah.
It seems to be a good platform for anything goes these days. So
yeah,
I like anything goes.
Yeah, I think I'll probably let my daughter handle that. I'll get her to maybe start throwing some stuff as we get more video content coming out. Maybe have her start throwing some of that stuff on TikTok and Snapchat and some stuff like that. I kind of try to limit myself on what I'm doing, because I find I can spend too much time on the I try to do enough on the marketing side and the social side to obviously get things out there, but then I find it's like, well, I could spend all day on that when I really ought to be working on this
I should be writing music.
You know?
We've actually talked on the podcast ad nauseum actually about, man, I just wanted to play guitar like Ace Frehley like you did. And now I've got to be a recording engineer. I got to be a video editor. Then I got to be a marketing, social media guru. And, it just becomes, like you said, it becomes too many hats. So so you are getting some help from your daughter, you said?
Yeah, she's jumping in to help me do some of the marketing stuff that I don't, either don't want to do or don't have time for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. Well, let's check out a track, Even Your Dog.
Yeah.
We'll fire that off. Is there anything you want to say about that before we play it?
Well, I think the lyric speaks for itself when you hear it. It's kind of it's a song to me that's kind of humorous, although it's not meant to be a joke. It's
Right.
kind of like I was talking to this was a while back, but I think it relates to this song too. It wasn't specifically related to this song, but I remember a while back, a couple of years ago, I was working on a different song with a singer, and he was asking me what kind of what the attitude was of the song that we were trying to deliver and that kind of thing. And I think that's kind of where this song lies. I was trying to explain to him, it's like you need to have a sense of humor about it, but at the same time, it's not a joke. It's like, I think David Lee Roth and Van Halen were masters of that. They would have songs
tongue in cheek.
Yeah, had a lot of humor, and ZZ Top the same way too. There'd be humorous elements to the song, but they weren't clowns.
Right.
It's like we're here and we're rocking, and we mean business. But there's some fun things going on. We can still rock, but have a smile on our face. So I think that's kind of the general attitude behind this song.
All right, cool. Well, let's check it out. Even Your Dog, Engines of Ruin.
Friends will come, friends will go. You take the cake, try to take my soul. Tried to be your friend, but now I quit. Even your dog is a little bitch. A little bitch. Talking small town, says you're making sin. Pull the shades down, my mind's twisted in the wind. Dig for gold now, if you're looking for love that lasts, you will find out. Keep your paws out of my cash. Lovers can come, lovers can go. Take you love control. Try to cut some slack, cause it's innocent. But even your dog is a little bitch. A mean little bitch. Friends will come, friends will go. I hear the call, gotta hit the road. Tried to be your friend, but now I quit. Even your dog is a little bitch. A trifling little bitch.
That is great. All right, I get the song now. I get it. It's a lot of. I got a lot of little notes on that. The drums. Are you doing in a drum room, or are those programmed? How are you doing it? They sound great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's live drums. My buddy JL Bettis does the drums, and he's actually, we had talked a little bit earlier about me originally being from East Tennessee. He's in East Tennessee. We've tracked some drums here before. He actually did those in East Tennessee, and we flew them in. Of course, the raw tracks sound considerably different from where they ended up sounding.
Sure.
After I mixed them and processed them and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate that. I really work
hard on drums, right?
Yeah, I really work hard on drums, and it's always, it seems like I always want them to sound better than I think they come out sounding in the end. But usually I'm pretty happy with the drum sounds. It's just that's something I still kind of fight with, trying to make them as good as they can be.
Yeah. Well, they sound like I wouldn't have been able to tell if that was something like Superior Drummer or one of the virtual instrument type drum kits, because it sounded crisp and clean. I love that little counter melody. I think it's in the beginning of the chorus. He sings a line and then you do an octave counter melody with him. Mm-hmm. That's a really cool part.
Oh, cool. I appreciate that.
And then the other thing I have here, well, first off, who's on doing the vocals on that?
That is a buddy of mine that actually lives in California, but he runs all over the United States. His name is Emo Aladdin.
Wow.
And he fronts I guess they're the number one Queen tribute band in the United States. So
nice.
He does Freddie Mercury on stage.
Yeah, Zach can hear that range there.
Yeah, you can hear that character in his voice. Mm-hmm. Even though obviously he didn't try to, I didn't say, hey, sing this song and try to sound like Freddie Mercury.
Right.
We didn't approach it that way or anything like that. But he's a really super talented guy and a great entertainer. The name of that band for people that are into that kind of stuff is called Kings of Queen.
Oh, nice.
And man, I tell you, I met him because I was playing in a band out of Nashville here, doing some work with a band for a little while, and we got out and did a couple live shows and actually opened for them a couple of times, a couple of shows that they did here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And man, they're fantastic. So if you like that kind of stuff and want to hear, Queen music played live and see a really good show, I definitely recommend anybody go see them.
Does he look like Freddie Mercury? Does he pull that off?
He pulls it off. He's got the moves and stuff, and I had even talked to him. I said, man, he does wardrobe changes. Sure. I mean, it's full on.
Yeah, the tribute bands, they go all out. They're all over Atlanta. But most of the guys, the Aerosmith tribute band here in town, a buddy of mine, Nathan Utz, fronts. Man, he's got the mannerisms, he's got the vocals down, and he looks like him. It's kind of weird, that the right people find the right band to tribute, I guess.
Yeah. I was so impressed by all the, all the little mannerisms and movements that he does and stuff. And I said, man, how much time did you spend, working on this? And he said a lot. And he told me he actually hired a professional choreographer out there in California to come in and work with him and stuff. And I said, well, it shows because, it's pretty amazing because it's just,
well, those guys
makes you smile to see somebody taking it that far,
Yeah, and those guys are putting food on the table and keeping the lights on and the mortgage paid doing those tribute bands.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, that's the difference maker of going to that extreme to do an homage to something. Right. Because, a livelihood's on the line, you're going to get it right. Or
Yeah.
or you're not going to get booked,
Yeah. And, in general, the whole tribute band thing, for me, I could always kind of take it or leave it. But when you see one that's that good and that entertaining, it's just like, well, regardless of what I think of a tribute band, in general, it's like you got to get up for this because it's so good,
Have you seen Zoso? Those are some buddies of mine that do a Zeppelin tribute nationwide.
Yeah.
And they're really, really good. If you're going to see a Zeppelin tribute band, that would be the one to go see.
That's the one to see. I think I've seen them on YouTube before, but I haven't actually seen them in person.
On your track, Even Your Dog is a Bitch, is the solo. The tone that you went to on the solo is kind of a fuzz tone. You do a solo and then you land back in and you play that ba-na-na-na, that cool little rhythm riff there. What were you using to get that tone on that part? If you remember.
Well, I don't remember what the actual I can't remember. I could probably go back in and find that patch and see what it was.
Okay,
at some point. I don't remember now, but I actually used a Helix to track that.
Okay, so a patch within the Helix.
Yeah,
a fuzz tone. The Helix is a great sounding product, man.
It is. I end up tracking a lot with it. I've got different tube amps and cabs here, and I do a lot of stuff, micing up amps. But I'll tell you, in all honesty, there's been times when I've, tracked apart with a tube amp and then,
wrong sound.
thought, well, I'm going to try this, and I've tracked it with the Helix and compared the two, and the Helix won out. And, sometimes it goes both ways.
Yeah,
sometimes it's the opposite.
Yeah.
But,
for sure,
it's amazing really how far
technology's come as far as sounding good versus, I had a Art SGX 2000 in the early 90s, and it was like groundbreaking processor at the time. I plugged it in the other day and I'm like, these suck. Every patch in here. Okay, that one's okay, but comparatively to what we have today, it's just ridiculous. I noticed a little lunchbox. What is that little lunchbox back there? That's a little Mesa Boogie? Yeah, that guy.
That's one of those little Mesa. It's called a Mini Rectifier 25. And it's a tiny little thing. It's got little knobs on it and everything. They just kind of squeezed it all in there, but it's all tube and just rips. Because I used to.
You can run that into a 412 and sound like a big boy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I've been kind of toying with a live rig. Lately when I've been playing live, I've just been using a Helix through a couple of their power cabs, those FRFRs that they have.
Yeah.
Which works great because you can carry a lot of sounds without having to carry, a monstrous pedal board. I mean, the Helix is a decent size itself, but it's all there. It's all programmed. You hit one button instead of having to tap dance a bunch of different pedals, which I like pedals too, but just the convenience. Yeah. The convenience of that and having those FRFR cabs is just really consistent. It's portable.
Well, have you found that you've gotten spoiled with stereo imaging from your rig?
Well, because
the delays.
I rarely, I haven't spoiled myself with it because I rarely actually use it in stereo.
Oh, okay.
When I use it live, I'm running it mono because I know the front of house guy's going to take mono anyway, and I kind of don't want to.
A lot of systems
usually,
now
but
I demand stereo.
Sometimes not, but most of the time around here locally, it's like they've got one DI, and you just and generally when I track guitars too, Rarely, every once in a while, if it's like a clean stereo thing or something, but most of the time, probably 98% of the time, I'm just doing mono guitars and like doubling them and stuff like that. Anyway, I very rarely use stereo.
Remember when we said you could have 128 tracks? I use stereo on everything. Even on a stereo track, like if I'm doubling a rhythm guitar track, I'll put my stereo track down and I'll shift him, hard left and 11 o'clock, and then I'll double that and I'll go hard right 2 o'clock, and it's just a wall of sound. It sounds so good. Yeah, I'm spoiled as can be. I won't play anywhere unless I'm in stereo. Well, if you can see, I don't know if you can see, I've got two 412 Marshall cabinets, and I run my Kemper into those cabinets using a teeny tiny foot pedal power amp, so with a volume knob on it, so I can have stereo sound but be small club volume. And then I've got XLRs. Your Helix has XLRs to the house, right?
Yeah, I can actually XLR off the Helix itself or off of the power cabs.
Yeah.
So depending on where their DI is at, because sometimes they won't have one at the front of the stage except just for like the vocal mic or something.
Yeah, right.
And so they can take it right off the power cab at the back too if they'd rather.
Yeah. Yeah, and most of the clubs that I play here in Atlanta, even the smaller, just rock out clubs that have stickers plastered all over the bathroom wall where you can't even see sheetrock anymore. Those type of clubs, even those guys are like, man, thank you for bringing a Kemper and thank you for giving me stereo image, because I'm the only guitar player in the band, so it just kind of helps widen my signal live.
Oh, I can see that. And sure.
And the other thing about the Kemper and the Helix both is no matter, you go into one of those dark bars, or if you go into a venue that's got the raised stage, the drum riser, all the smoke and lights and everything, they're all running stereo systems, and wherever you plug in, if it's the same signal, at rehearsal right here, we use in-ears in rehearsal. It sounds the same here as it does wherever we play.
Right.
The consistency of those type of processors these days is what the win is, and the not tap dancing. We just did a whole segment the other night about a girl, Cassandra Carson, plays in a band called Paralandra, and she is belting out some amazing vocals, but she's also playing guitar, and so she's having to sing, play guitar, and tap dance on pedals. She's like, nah, I'd keep it as simple as possible and just use a Friedman with a couple of pedals, so I don't. You can mess a part up real quick hitting the wrong pedal.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got to where, on the Helix, and it's not like on any of these units, the buttons are all that close. But, when you're on stage and you're jumping around and you're sweating and you're, rocking out.
Yeah.
I actually got to where I started putting
the caps?
No, I started putting the same patch on two buttons right beside each other.
Right.
So all I have to do when I'm switching is kind of aim for the middle of those two.
Yeah.
And that way I hit the right patch one way or the other, and I'm not accidentally, hitting the wrong patch beside it. I found that helped me a lot, because it's like I don't want to have to look that close.
Yeah.
I want to just see and kind of aim for those two buttons, and I know I'm going to hit one of them.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a little trick that I still, because I'm usually only using 2 or 3 patches at the most in a song.
Yeah.
So I can have the main 2 right there on the bottom of the Helix, and if I have one more, I'll have it up in a position where I'm not going to kick the rotary knobs and stuff.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because they're all right there, right? I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I've been using these little caps
Yeah.
that you can put on top of your stomp switch,
Yeah.
and it gives you a little bit more of a target. And
Yeah.
the other thing that's cool is that they're different colors. So I know, okay, gold is delay,
Right.
blue is going to be octave, silver is going to be tremolo pedal, and red is, what do you think red is?
Like distortion to
Yeah,
me.
distortion and
Yeah.
boost.
Yeah.
So
No,
I found those helpful.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, you can find them on eBay or Amazon.
And the thing that I ordered the other day, because you were talking about the dark stages and stuff, I actually ordered some little. I don't know if they're quite fluorescent, but they're really bright green. Some little stick-on dots that I could put on the side of my neck.
Oh, yeah.
That's the worst thing is when a light guy leaves you totally in the dark. And
or a spotlight on you. If you got a spotlight,
Yeah.
you're like, whoa, I can't see.
Yeah.
I know my guitar fretboard pretty good, but it sure is nice to know where 5, 7, 9, and 12 is.
Because that's invariably when they leave you in the dark, you're going to be like one fret off.
Yeah.
Which is, I'd rather be 3 frets off than one.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing worse than hitting an absolute clam of a note live.
Yeah.
And then, if you hit that clam, you have to commit to it and figure out, okay, how do I make it to where they don't notice? Let me play it off.
You got to resolve that sucker quick.
Somehow, some way. It was jazz,
Yeah.
All right. So the other thing, listening to Engines of Ruin right off the bat is your tunings. You're clearly down there somewhere. What are you guys tuning to, or is it all over the board so far?
Man, it is all over the place, and I'm kind of scaring myself when I start thinking about taking some of this stuff out live, because I can't control myself on,
you need a
on
chaperone.
getting into different tunings, but it's been one of those things where some of the things that I've written, I wouldn't have written if I wasn't messing around in that tuning to start with.
Right.
And Even Your Dog is actually a very strange tuning, and it kind of came about in a strange way. It's actually, the guitar is tuned, if you just played the open strings, it's an open B9 chord. It's like B dominant 9 chord, which is the strangest thing. And how I ended up there is, I've always liked, there's at least a couple, there may be more than that, but I've always liked some of Rick Nielsen's songwriting, some of his riffs in Cheap Trick.
Sure.
And there's one of the things that he does is he'll take a chord and invert it, and if you don't really know or into the theory behind it, you think, well, he's moving a chord, he's changing chords,
right.
But he's actually just moving the bass note, and inverting the chord up and down the neck. And those kind of riffs always kind of stood out to me. I'm like, well, that was a unique way to approach that.
Yeah, because you always have open strings underneath, right?
Well,
sometimes,
sometimes. And I had got this idea in my head, because a lot of the times in his songwriting, he'll do it moving up, where he'll start on a root note and he'll move it up neck a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I got this idea in my head. I'm like, started kind of hearing, I'm like, well, what if I started on the 5th of the chord and came down to the 3rd and then down to the octave? So it's kind of deceptive, where you think the first, note you generally think is the tonic of the scale or whatever, but I'm actually starting on the
5th and working your way down. Yeah.
5th. And I started playing around that, just going from 5 to 3 to 1. And I thought, well, what kind of chord could I have that, would make sense, but yet sound maybe a little unusual? And I just kind of started tuning the guitar, not even thinking about what the notes were. Just like, well, what sounds good over this? What sounds good over? And I ended up in that tuning. That
B9.
the very first note when the song starts, when it's that da-da, da-da, that's that B9 chord, and then it immediately moves up to the third. The whole,
when you hit
it's all six strings open.
Yeah, so when you hit that bam, that's everything open?
Yeah, that's the whole 6 strings open.
It sounds big.
Yeah, and I like stuff like that when you have a whole bunch of a lot of times even with just a power chord, I'll stretch it out and do all 6 strings across the neck, even just doing a power chord.
Yeah,
because I've always liked that big sound like that. And
okay, so you've got one guitar that's all the way down to B. Obviously, not obviously, but you are you using heavier gauge strings for that to handle those low ends?
Yeah, and I actually used a baritone. I got one of those Paul Reed Smith 277s in that import series that they do. They've got that SE 277 that's like a baritone scale.
Yep.
And I've actually since got another one. You can't see it because it's over here on the wall, but I've also got a Gretsch baritone that's really cool. And you could do it on a standard like I do some stuff. Actually, the one of the other songs that you're going to do, All the Devils, it's in B, but it's not played on a baritone, and it's actually really only the 6th string is dropped down, but we can get to that when we get to it.
We'll go there. So you're saying, so my tunings that I use, I'm in drop C sharp, so you're tuned to half step to, E flat, and then drop down from there. And then I'm in drop C, which is basically, a whole step down and then drop your low string. Right. You're going to B.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. That's Black Sabbath, right? Or is that the 90s stuff?
I don't know. I hadn't kept up. I hadn't thought about it all that much. And I was playing a couple of years ago. I was playing, and that's originally when I got the baritone guitar, because I was playing a little bit with a kind of a metal band. That was in the area. And they were doing a lot of stuff in A.
Wow.
And that's why I got that baritone originally, because it's like, well, this is just too low to try to do on just a regular, you'd either have to go with a 7-string guitar.
Right.
Or, I just decided to go the baritone route because I didn't really want to, I wanted to kind of keep, for me, it feels better and more natural to just keep with 6-string guitars and then just either have the scale length or have the string gauge or whatever that you need to get to where you need to go. And I guess I kind of borrowed that idea a little bit from Wes Borland, because he in the early stages, he went through a thing of doing 7-string guitars, and then he eventually just switched over to just playing 6 strings. And if they were tuned down, they were tuned down.
Right.
Of course, with the exception of which that's one thing I like about the Gretsch baritone guitar.
Can you pull it down?
Let me grab it.
I'd love to see it. Yeah. All right. So that's a baritone. Yep. So what is the scale length? What's the scale length of a baritone?
Well, and it's interesting because the PRS, it's like 27 or 27. It may be 27 3/4. I think that's why they call it a 27. It's called a SE 277 on the PRS. I think it may be 27 3/4 or something. don't hold me to that. Somebody can look that up real quick and see if it's just 27 or whatever. And this Gretsch is even a longer scale than that. I think it's like 28 or 29.
Wow.
And we mentioned there let me hang this back up, but we mentioned the Wes Borland thing. Sorry about that. You know, he has he's got that custom 4-string guitar.
What? I haven't seen that.
Yeah, well, he pulls that one out when there's 2 songs that they do. I know one of them's Nookie, and I can't remember what the other one are, but he's all the way down to F sharp.
Wow. Okay.
And so he has this custom 4-string guitar that basically has a bass string for the low string.
Yeah.
But that Gretsch has got a long enough scale that I can actually get down to F sharp on it if I want to.
Yeah.
And
well, the reason I ask is because I have a Fender 6.
Yeah.
Which is the Beatles used it actually as their bass guitar on a lot of tracks back in the day. But it's and I'm looking at it right now. It's I don't know the scale length, but it's long. And it's basically tuned like a guitar, but it's 1 octave lower than a guitar.
Right.
And when you play a riff on a standard guitar, whatever your tuning is, and you play double that riff with that thing, it sounds like all hell breaking loose.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But you have to adjust your string gauges if you're going to go down into the lower the nether regions of frequencies on your guitars. You're going to have to adjust your string gauges to be able to not be floppy or rubber bands at that point.
Yeah, and especially for live stuff when you're going to be hyped up and be playing more aggressively anyway. Yep. The All Your Devils, the stuff that I tracked on it ended up being down to B on the low E string, and actually I got away with just using a regular, like out of a 10 gauge set, using a 46, and so it's real kind of sloppy, but if you're careful and kind of keep it under control, it sounds really cool because it kind of has it has like an edge to it where it's like, that note's about to lose control, but then it quite doesn't,
Yeah. Or if you grab a chord, if you grab a chord just a little too hard, it's going to be sharp, that kind of thing. I like when I'm doing some of this stuff, I use the Ernie Ball heavy bottom skinny tops orange packs. It's a 52 to 10, I think, and there's
I use those a lot.
Yeah, that's where I live when I do drop C's and those types of things. But let's check out all the Devils. This is your latest track, and what can you tell us about that before we play it?
Man, this one I was just really, really pleased.
And who did your artwork? It's a brilliant art graphic.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Well, I did that. So a lot of this stuff I just do myself. So, if people like it, I get credit for it. And if I do something people hate, I get credit for that too,
Yeah, you can take good with the bad.
Yeah. And, but yeah, this song, it was just, I don't know. It was one of those that I was just really happy with the way it all came together. Sometimes it just seems like things work, and this one just really seemed to work. I was happy with just the way the songwriting seemed to come together really naturally, and my buddy that I got to sing on it is a guy named Ashton Blake. And he's out of Kentucky. He has a band that's been around a few years called Native Sons.
Oh, I've heard of them.
Yeah. And he's a great Really talented, really great singer, and I think his voice really matched what the song needed perfectly. It was just, like I say, it was just one of those that for me came together. Of course, you never know how other people's going to respond to it, but the response to the song has been great so far. So I've been really happy with that.
All right. Well, let's check it out. All the Devils from Engines of Ruin. Man, that track reminds me if Black Sabbath and Alice in Chains had a baby, it would be this track. And
well, I'll definitely.
Those are two good ones.
I'll definitely take that as a compliment.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Sure.
And so one of my notes here on this is, do vocalists that you're working with and bringing in, do they like the tunings being low because they can fit in their power range and not have to be trying to, hit higher notes and stuff. And they're, just be, he sounded very comfortable at that range.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I wrote, in these particular, for both of these two songs, as Engines of Ruin as a project grows and develops and more people come into it, sort of thing. I'd say there'll be more co-writing going on the stuff. Yeah. And on these two particular songs that we've just put out so far, Even Your Dog, and this one, All the Devils, I actually wrote the vocal melodies and sent them the lyrics and the melodies and everything. So it was just
Do you sing?
Terribly.
Me too. They won't even give me a mic in my bands.
Yeah.
The only mic they give me is a talk box. Yeah. I was like, that was a mistake.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what I do sometimes. If it's a situation where the way the lyrics lay in the phrasing is just really, really obvious.
Yeah.
I'll actually just send them the melody on a track on piano. Okay. Just single note melody on piano, so they're not subjected to me trying to sing it. And now if it's a situation where, there's going to be a note, where you're holding one word or one syllable and doing a melisma on it, letting it rise or fall off, or, doing multiple melody notes, then sometimes I'll go ahead and sing it, like if the phrasing's not obvious, and I'll just tell them, hey, don't let me singing it kind of, turn you off of the whole song because it's I just.
Yeah. Do you give them freedom to elaborate on the melody idea that you have?
Yeah, I always tell them, hey, this is kind of where we want it to be, but obviously you're a singer and
do your thing.
Do your thing, and in both cases, they've both stepped up to the plate and knocked it out of the park, so to speak, and which is great. You love working with guys like that.
Well, they're pros.
They've been around long enough to know what to do, and you can just give them the guideline and they can take it from there.
Yeah, they're guys that understand what the song needs,
right.
and they do what they need. After the guitar solo in All the Devils, the vocal comes in and there's like a slap back reverse reverb or something going on, almost like on Heartbreaker from Led Zeppelin. Heartbreaker. Whereas like the reverb reverse comes in and then the vocalist comes in. In this case, the vocal came in and you could hear it come back around behind it. Did you mix that?
Yeah.
Do you remember that part? Because I heard it. It's awesome.
Now, are you talking about in the vocal or in the guitar that's behind the vocal?
No, the vocal. After the guitar solo, after the solo, there's a reverse vocal reverb thing that slaps back. He sings a line and then it's like, what? It's really cool.
Honestly, I'll have to.
You have to go back and look at that because
I'll have to check that out. It may be because I don't think I actually did anything with like a reverse delay or anything on that, but the vocal is double tracked.
Okay.
So it may be where one of the performances is off from the other in a cool way, and it comes in fighting against it or something.
Yeah, I want you to check it out because it's one of my notes. And what I've noticed doing 67 of these podcasts and intricately listening to the artist that's sending me material, with my in-ears in, I mean, I'm sealed in that world of the song, and I'm listening to everything. And I hear so many things. And this, again, I'm going to go down the rampage of, if you're a band and you're rehearsing, and if you have the ability at all to do an in-ear rehearsal with your band, you're going to hear everything great, and you're going to hear every little nuance that is not so great.
Right.
You hear so much in the in-ear world. I recommend everybody do it, because you can tighten up your set very quickly, because you can hear everything. It's like if you're in a room, this room is like 13 by 30, and if we were in here with live amps, even that 25 watt Mesa Boogie tube amp, if we were in here and the Hammond going, I got electronic drums so that I can do ears. But if we had a drum set in here and live bass amp and a live 25 watt tube amp, it'd be so loud you couldn't really hear a clam made on the other side of the room. But with in-ears, it's like you're listening to Police Synchronicity in 1982 with your Sennheiser yellow headphones on, and you can hear every nuance of everything. That's how we listened to records back in the day, actual records with headphones on.
Well, you'll either get tight real quick or break the band up real quick.
Very true. Yeah. Man, you weren't as good as I thought you were. And it really helps. You know who it really helps? The vocalist. Because if you're in a loud room, what does the vocalist need to do? Turn up the vocals super loud in the monitor. Well, what happens next? Feedback. You know, and feedback is I guess it's kryptonite to Superman. I don't know any other superheroes that have, the anti thing, but I mean, man, feedback to me, I will leave a room running if there's feedback at all.
Yeah, it's bad news.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole wattage thing, especially with guitar amps, is so deceptive, because just like you say, I mean, this 25 watt
loud
Marshall, I've got a little 15 watt orange over here that'll just, I mean, it'd make you deaf in a heartbeat. I mean, these things will get, you never, the only time, that these bands needed 100 watt Marshalls was in
stadiums
1969 when they had no PA, when the guitar amp was the guitar, basically,
Very true.
because there was a whole era there when PAs hadn't caught up, and they're like, well, hell, I got to get loud or nobody's going to hear me at all, know.
Yeah.
And but I mean, gosh, 100, even a 50 watt guitar head is just overkill most of the time, you know.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you can still take these little 25 watt, 15 watt amps that they have out now, and they still, will just peel your face off if you crank them up,
You know what I found very interesting was I went to just a jam session with some buddies, and I had, it's like, well, I got a 75 watt solid state. I'm not even going to say what amp it was, but it was a solid state 75 watt amp, and I was like, this will be fine. And we were set up like outside his garage for a birthday party, and my buddy had a 30 watt tube amp, and he was blowing me away with a 30 watt tube amp versus my 75 watt solid state amp.
Yeah.
So if you're out there in the guitar world and kind of learning this thing, you are not going to be able to keep up with a tube amp that's 25 watts, 15 watts, 30 watts, even if you have a 75 watt solid state amp, because it just doesn't push it doesn't push the sound. I don't know anything about Class A, Class D amplification, any of that kind of stuff, other than I'm not loud enough. I do know that much.
Yeah.
What if your experience has been there?
Yeah, and you're right, because there's that whole thing of, oftentimes wattage doesn't equate to volume.
No.
And it's just like, we were talking earlier about, I'm sometimes using the Helix through those power cabs,
Yep,
and
not
those
loud.
Line 6 power cabs, they're rated at like,
150.
like 200 watts
Yeah.
or something. It's
Yeah.
just some stupid rating just as far as like the wattage, but it's not.
Yeah.
If you compared it to, a 200 watt guitar, a tube guitar amp would be like a jet engine in your ear, probably, where, these aren't, I mean, they're loud enough, but they don't, you don't look at it and listen to it and think, oh, that's definitely 200 watts.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
Well, you do know. If you want volume, go with a tube amp. If you want, this is something I kind of throw out there because it's my experience. 1987, 89, in that era, had a 100-watt Pioneer home stereo with like 15, a single 15, a mid, and a horn home stereo. It was crystal clear, and it was loud. That's the volume. That's the max volume I want to listen to stuff at. And if you're pushing stuff so loud that the crowd has to have earplugs or any kind of ear protection, it's not a comfortable listening environment to present your material. So I think I have reached, if it's too loud, you're too old. I have officially reached that level.
Yeah, well, you get past, but you're right, though. You get past a certain level of return, with volume, because, when you're out seeing a rock show, you want it to be
clear,
loud enough to be excited, but past a certain point, it's just hurt. You're not gaining anything past a certain point. You're actually starting to lose because, like you say, it's just to the point of
it's
uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue to in your entire life, what is the loudest concert you've ever seen?
Oh, without a doubt.
Immediately, you know it.
Oh, I immediately know it. It was Metallica on the Justice for All tour.
Wow.
They did a show here in Nashville. There used to be a venue here it's kind of a thing of legend now because it shut down many years ago, but there's a outdoor amphitheater here in Nashville called Starwood Amphitheater. And I don't know if they just decided to, I don't even know if they knew what was going on or not.
The sound guy was pissed off.
The sound guy, man, he must have had new gear. He wanted to see if he could blow up or something. But I played with the band that I was in at that time. I played with a drummer who, was one of these loud, I mean, great for a rock band because he was one of these loud, bashing drummers, and that's what this particular band needed.
Yeah.
But he didn't know what an earplug was, and that's one thing for me that, when you got one of those cymbals right in your ear, just cutting your head off, I have to have earplugs. I just can't take it. And he was just one of those, I'm going to be loud and I don't care and I don't need no stinking earplugs.
Yeah.
Well, I was working that day of the show. And so I was going over, all the guys in the band were going to the show. And I was working, so I was going to meet up with him later. And he calls me during the opening act. I think it was like Candlebox or somebody was opening for him. And he calls me and said, "Hey, man, are you still there at the shop?" I said, "Yeah." "What's up?" "Man, bring me some earplugs."
Really? Holy crap.
I said, "What? What are you talking about? You don't wear earplugs." He said, "Man, bring me some earplugs." He said, "I don't know what's going on, but it's loud as hell out here."
Wow.
And I thought, oh, crap, for him to say something, it's really. And so, I took me a
what
big
year was
beefy.
That? What year was that?
Oh, Gosh, what year was that album out? Was it 1990 or when was that? I don't know. I'd have to look back and see when that tour was.
I'm not a Metallica aficionado. I will say I did my first mosh pit in my entire and last and my first and last mosh pit at Metallica at Lakewood Amphitheater, probably 2003 ish.
First and last.
First and last. I got such a deep thigh bruise from somebody. I couldn't walk out of there, and it was an absolute mess. Yeah, but interesting that he recognized that. Hey, I can't handle this. Please help me.
And
help me.
And I
asked you for help.
Yeah, and I took him some, and I found the biggest, thickest pair of earplugs that I had, and I took those and sunk them in. And man, I mean, you could just feel it like it was like somebody giving you CPR all night in your chest.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, there's no way I'd be able to stand it out here if I didn't have some big, thick earplugs. You know, it was one of those where, you know, if Metallica, that wasn't the thing in those days, but if Metallica was tuning down real low like a lot of these bands are nowadays, they would have probably hit the brown note.
Yeah, made you poop. Well, it just comes down to, you know, Lars's kick was probably cool because it was punchy, but, you know, if the high end, the cymbals and all that kind of stuff is super loud and high frequencies, everybody in the crowd's going to be deaf.
Oh, yeah.
Ears ringing at a minimum.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not comfortable.
Yeah, you get that 2 to 5K, you know, upper mid range just ripping you right down the center of your skull, you know.
Yeah. Frequencies when you're mixing, understanding where things should sit in the mix it's an art form. I've even downloaded pictures, you know, JPEG images of, you know, your bass guitar should be in this frequency, kicks here, and your snares here, and your guitar should be here, and vocals should be here. It's very important to kind of follow the Duncan Hines ingredients and how to bake a cake properly, you know, instead of just winging it and throwing everything at the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
I'm going to have sriracha in my damn white chocolate cake.
Yeah, and you know, it's one of those things where, you know, you can break the rules, but it's helpful to at least have a foundation in the rules to know
the rules.
To know when you should break them and when you should not break them, and you know I'm all for, you know, experimentation and creativity and all that, but like you say, there's some things that just you need to kind of know, you know, the ballpark of where things need to reside, at least, you know, at least get you started in the right direction.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a sonic mess.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's a thing that I try to do a lot in my mixes and with guitar tones. You know, we had talked about, you know, you kind of mentioned the thing about, and we talked about earlier, you know, going from way back in the day of being limited to 4 tracks on a Porta Studio, and now, you know, essentially have an unlimited amount of tracks that you can have on a recording. And, you know, I really try in a lot of ways to pretend that I don't have that ability, you know, to really keep my track count under control. You know, I find it's the whole thing with guitar tones too. You know, I find, and if you go back and listen, you know, to what to me is still some of the most well recorded and best sounding music, you know, you listen to some of the, you know, the Led Zeppelin and the Black Sabbath and you know, all the things that influence, you know, we talked about the 90s, you know, being so influenced by the 70s, and and a lot of those recordings are great. And a lot of the, at least to me, in my opinion, and of course, I go all over the place. I'll have a guitar tone that's just totally ratted out, fuzzed out when I feel like it's called for. But I find in to me and to what I like to hear, I find some of the biggest sounding guitars are actually a whole lot cleaner than
Yes.
people would think.
Yeah.
Because you think about some of those, classic
AC/DC is a classic example.
AC/DC,
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin. You think about some of those Led Zeppelin songs and how big the guitars sound, and you go back and listen to them close, and it's like, it. Unless you really think about it and listen closely to it, it's really kind of shocking how clean
Yeah.
some
Agreed.
of those guitar tones are. And so, I find myself thinking about that a lot, and like, because you kind of like what we were talking about in volume.
Gain
It's
is
the same thing
way.
with it's the
Gain.
same thing with guitar tones with gain.
Yeah.
When you reach that tipping point
Yep.
to where you go to too much gain,
Yep.
the further you go past that, it just sounds smaller and weaker instead of sounding bigger.
That's an extremely, that might be the most profound point on 67 podcast. That I did the same. I did the same thing. I was all gain, and then all my profiles were all Marshalls and Mesas and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I just sound like a shrill, shrieking little bitch, like your dog. What was it? Yeah, I was a bitch like your dog.
Yeah, even your tone is a bitch.
Yeah, my tone's a bitch, and I was like, "This sucks." And I kind of referenced, if you listen to Angus and Malcolm Young when they're playing rhythm together, it's lightly crispy in your face, but not. It's not Metallica, but those two lightly crispy guitar tracks together created a wall of awesomeness.
Yeah.
And I was trying to do that as just single guitar. I went to a Vox 30. I'm using a Vox profile, and it's my sound now. I won't use anything else. It's not super overdriven. If I want to go a little heavy, I hit that red button. Remember the red one? I'll hit that guy, and we'll get a little bit nasty. But it was just a shrill, shrieky, shitty tone.
Yeah.
And I don't like shitty tones, so I changed it. And
Yeah.
I've been using this tone for probably past 5 years. But that's absolutely correct. If you overgain everything, you actually have a diminishing return.
Yeah, it starts to sound so small and tiny, and you think, you listen to that one guitar, and if it's coming out of speaker or in your headphones, and oh man, this sounds badass, but you get it in the mix with everything else, and all of a sudden it just sounds so tiny.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to mention something earlier. When we were talking about recording even that 25 watt Mesa Boogie, or whatever tube amp that you were recording, and then you compared it to the Helix.
Mm-hmm.
I want to turn you on to something that I use, and when you record with a microphone, the Helix on the FRFRs or Direct or whatever you're doing, you're striping to tape that sound. You have no ability to go back and turn the gain down, EQ it differently, add an effect. You have nothing. You can add an effect, but you're striping, you're committing to that tone. I use a product called Positive Grid, and it's a plug-in that you can use on a channel, and you just plug your guitar into it, and you can record a guitar part, and Vox AC30 with a little bit of delay, some chorus, flanger, whatever you want. But then as you're building the song on top of that, if it no longer is the right tone, it's just recorded my I don't know what to call it, my dry guitar. And I can go in and change the amp in the plugin and make it something absolutely different.
Right.
So I can
totally reamp it. Yeah.
It's a reamp. Yeah. So I can take that track and double it, leave that clean one or the lightly crispy one, and then start changing another amp under that same performance. And now I'm starting to blend tones, or I can go back and say, yeah, it was too much gain, too much.
Yeah.
And so check out, if you're out there, Positive Grid. I use Bias Effects 2. Make sure you have the latest operating system so you can update. But I'm on a Mac, so I'm dealing with that. But, there's so many awesome tools out there for great tone that you don't even need tube amps. I have a room full, and I'm not shitting you, a room full of vintage Fenders, Marshalls, Carvins, Peavies, Soldanos, Black Stars. Everything sits in the other room, and I don't touch any of them because the speed of my workflow when I'm writing something, I don't want to have to go out there and grab an amp, plug it into this cabinet to get that sound, get this pedal to get that sound. I can just do it in one plugin.
Right.
And I can get a Hendrix tone. I can get whatever I want. And it's adjustable after the fact.
Yeah.
That's my rant. That's my rant on guitar tones.
I appreciate that. That's good.
Write it down.
Good to know. Well, and the thing is, you'll run into guys that, it has to be this or it has to be that, and
the Eric Johnsons.
That.
The Eric Johnsons.
And as long as you get, it's like. It really stuck with me. One of his things I was watching, Andrew Shepp said all that counts at the end of the day is what comes out of the speaker.
Yeah.
When you play that song, whatever comes out of the speaker or into the earbuds or whatever the listener is listening to, if it sounds good coming out of, if that end product sounds good, it doesn't matter how you got there.
Yeah. And you have to also understand that your listening audience doesn't give two shits about your tone that you think sounds great. They're just like, yay. Is it, is it, they are just referencing on what, has been fed to them as, oh, this is great tone. There's stories of Eric Johnson taking 3 days in the studio to get the tone of one part of one song.
Right. And, if that's what he felt like he needed to do and he felt like that got the best end result, I don't argue with that. I mean, I'm not going to do that myself, but I wouldn't argue with that. And, I kind of take it, I guess, a little bit of an offshoot from what you just said. I would say that, the average listener doesn't care about the minutia of how you got there.
Yeah.
They could care less if, like, we're sitting here talking about tube amps and helixes and, this, that, and the other. They could care less about that. But, again, back to the Andrew Shepp's thing, all that matters is what comes out of the speaker. The listener does know what they like, and they know what they think sounds good.
Right.
And oftentimes, a guitar tone that we as insiders or whatever you want to call it thinks sounds great, they will think sounds great, even though they could care less about what went into making that
how
tone.
you got it.
And a guitar tone that we think sounds like ass, oftentimes they'll agree and say, oh, that's that. I kind of thought I liked that song, but it sounds terrible, So, I agree. I don't think they care, they don't care about necessarily about the minutia of what it took to make it sound like it sounds, but they do. It's an emotional response to how something sounds. It's not only the song and the songwriting and the how the singer is singing it and conveying the emotion, but I think a huge part. I think the sound of the overall product is a huge part of whether it connects with somebody emotionally or not. When you hear, regardless of whether you know anything about music or not, when somebody hears John Bonham on When the Levee Breaks,
it's a cool drum part.
Most people are going to have an emotional response to that just because, well, not only the performance is amazing, but you're talking about one of the greatest drum sounds ever recorded, and it just it connects with people because just like myself, I know really nothing about the art world. Like if I go to an art gallery, but I know what I like.
You see something cool. You see Salvador Dali, which has inspired my logo. You're like, damn, that's a cool looking piece of artwork.
So you get that emotional connection, and I think music is the same way with people. And then, of course, I went off on a rant there too, but
well,
that's just the way I look at it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Well, one of the tracks that you have that I listened to, the intro to the song Prime, was very artistic and artworky. That's not the right word, but the track Prime has got a really cool intro. It's a really cool track. I want to play that track, and because it's so artsy fartsy, what led you to do all this keyboard work?
Well, it's I think I started writing that piece because there was some movie that I was watching, and I don't even remember the name of the movie now.
Yeah.
And I was listening to the soundtrack. And I thought, wow, that is a really cool piece of music. And I just wanted to know what it was. So I took my phone and played it on, ran the movie back on the TV and just recorded it on my phone, and then took that and started transcribing the chord changes and stuff in that film score. And that whole thing was what inspired it. I ended up taking the chord progression that they had and changing it up some and kind of turned it into something that I liked. And so I had that intro, and I thought, well, this is kind of cool. I'd kind of like to do something with this. And I thought, well, where's it going to go? And I ended up coming in and adding that whole kind of heavy metal guitar part that it transitions into. And then I wanted to bring that orchestra back again at the end to kind of wrap the whole thing up. And it just ended up being kind of a
sound score,
an experiment that I felt kind of worked out enough to put out there. And it was something that I put out from the get-go. The whole Engines of Ruin thing was intended to be more like a traditional band with songs, with vocals. But occasionally I'll write an instrumental work, and I thought, well, this is kind of cool enough to put out, and I just wanted to kind of put it out as a teaser just to kind of get the name set up and get like the Spotify accounts and everything set up. And I'm like, well, I'll just slip this out, and then after that we can come out and put out a song that's more of a traditional rock song. So that's kind of how it developed.
All right. Well, let's take a listen to it. This is Prime from Engines of Ruin. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
So on that track, who's doing the drums on that?
Now that track is programmed drums, and that track would probably be a good candidate to remix at some point if I can find the time to do it, because I think my drum mixing skills, it's probably been about 2 years since I did that song.
That was the first one, right?
Yeah, I think I could.
You could do it better, man. How many times do I go back and listen to a track and go, "Oh, I need to revisit that and I got to fix that, man." Yeah. After 30,000 times and mixing and getting it to where it is, you're always going to have that feeling of, man. There's nothing ever done, and it's just the way it is. A couple notes on that is I love the halftime that it goes to. Yeah. And then there were some guitar parts that sustained kind of infinitely. Yeah. How are you doing that?
That is the Digitech feedbacker pedal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use that a lot. There's a lot of that. Even some of the ones that don't carry out as far, you can hear like where I'm sustaining a note and that upper octave comes in on it and stuff on the top. Yeah. I had a lot of that feedbacker pedal in that song.
Have you ever tried a Sustainiac?
Maybe once.
Don't, because then you'll buy 7 of them like I did.
Right.
I have 7 Sustainiacs because it totally changed my guitar playing, because it's essentially that feedbacker pedal built into the guitar.
Right.
And you can play big long melodies and hit a note, hold it with vibrato until tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I'm cheating.
Well, it's cool though. I mean, like
it is.
Like say, if it gets you the end result that you want, it's not. I say go for it.
Yeah. Use the tech that's out there and ride with it, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Well, I really like that track because it's more in the sound tracking or what is it called when you cinematic sound scoring, soundtrack, whatever you want to call it, is orchestrated, type of music. And I dig that stuff a lot. So that's really cool.
I've always liked that stuff. I was always a big, not directly related to that, but all the kind of, prog or semi-prog, I've always been a big Rush. Queensryche, Rush, I've always loved all that kind of stuff. And, even some of these, songs that's one thing. It's not like a purposeful thing of, I have to throw this in there, but that's one thing I always liked about Stone Temple Pilots, because you listen to a lot of their stuff, on the surface, it's just, it's a cool hard rock band, but they incorporate a lot of unusual chord voicings that a lot of hard rock players don't necessarily venture into that territory. And I really, really enjoy stuff like that. And I find, a lot of times that I do that, just like the thing we were talking about, the whole thing, with the big B9 chord on that opening, even your dog. And, those kind of things just always appeal to me. It's like anytime you can have something that's, at least to me, cool, but a little off the beaten path, it's like, well, not everybody uses that chord. That sounds cool, and it's a little different. Those kind of things really appeal to me a lot. And so I find, even in just, what most people would consider kind of a more straight, kind of just regular hard rock song, I'll find myself throwing in
color chords,
little kind of unusual chords and stuff when I think it fits, when I like it,
color chords and turnarounds, that kind of thing. All right, well, as we land a plane, And on that thoughts on Jeff Beck in the aspect of what we're talking about, hitting colors and notes and styles that nobody else hit.
Yeah, well, and he was one of those guys. It's just like, well, and of course the same thing with Van Halen, and it's those players that when they play, you immediately know it's them.
Yeah, they invented it. Yeah,
yeah, and they just have they have a characteristic, there's an artistry to what they do, and it's something unique and stands out, and that's the kind of stuff that I've always responded to. And we were talking earlier about the general listening audience out there. I think just people in general respond to things like that are just a little bit. There's just something about it. Sometimes a little thing, but sometimes big things that just, it's like, well, I haven't really heard that before. It's like, there's that whole thing of, well, there's only 12 notes and everything's already been done,
a million times.
That's true to an extent, but then, there's this whole kind of parallel universe to that of artists that are, able to do things and bring things forward. And it's like, well, gee, I've never really heard anything quite like that before,
right.
And just even, even just a pop band, a band that was really popular, just like I mentioned, earlier, like Stone Temple Pilots, it's like, if you just take a lot of their stuff on a very surface level, it's like, oh, okay, that's a cool hard rock band, but if you really dive down into a lot of their song writing, it's like, man, what, where did they think to do that? Because there's really, unique approaches to some of the chord progressions that they do, and real unique chords that it's like, well, gee, I hadn't really heard anybody throw that chord in like that before and stuff. And
it's
like
all about
I said
the
earlier,
color. It's all about the color chords, right?
Yeah,
or
and
the
those
turnaround.
Those kind of things just totally appeal to me. It's like, when I hear something like that, it just instantly, it's like, wow, that was cool,
Yeah.
And, but yeah, Beck, the same thing, just that artistry and the way he played with his fingers and the Stratocaster vibrato, tremolo vibrato technique that he had that was really kind of unique to him, that nobody else really did it the way he did it.
How did he keep it in tune?
Well, and it's interesting because, I don't know if those guys used a whole lot of WD-40 or what they had going on, but the first, if I'm not mistaken, at least the first two Van Halen records were before he had Floyd Rose's. So he's doing all that dive bombing and crazy stuff that he was doing just on a regular Strat.
Well, we'd have to look that up, because he did have prototype Floyd Rose's guitars delivered to him. I'm not sure in what era, but there is definitely 100% footage of Eddie Van Halen playing shit that should not been able to be played on a Strat with no locking nut,
right? And
pulling it off.
Yeah,
it was like Hendrix, same thing.
Yeah,
but he would dive bomb and come up and be out.
Yeah,
let's be
real. A lot of times it was in his but his hand, a lot of times he'd be so far out of tune and he'd just pull it into tune.
Bend it till you find it.
With his fret hand, But just what you were talking about, I saw an old show pop up on YouTube the other night, an old Van Halen show, and I said, well, heck, I got to watch a little bit of this. And I think he was playing, he had for a while, of course, a lot of times, and I'm not a huge, as far as knowing all the intricacies of the Van Halen gear like some guys do, but, a lot of times with him, it was the same guitar, just with a new paint job, and because he was always,
Yeah.
but it was the guitar that was black and white with the black pick guard on it. You remember that one that actually had a pick guard on it for a while? And this particular show, I don't know if it was 77 or when it was, but he was playing that guitar, and it obviously did not have a Floyd on it. And he was just, I mean, it sounded like everything else Van Halen you've always heard, and it was a live show. And he was keeping it in tune, you know, and I just thought, Jesus, how in the world, you know?
I think that's a lot of this.
Yeah, you know. But, you know, he'd be within the song, you know, and no chance to even do that. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, how did he do that and come back and it's still there, you know?
That was kind of the biggest things about Van Halen in the early days was he was using 60s, 70s gear and pulling off 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2100s, 2200s sounds out of those guitars.
Well, and you know, the thing about him too, and you know, I really commend his taste, I guess, is what you'd credit to for that. And I mean, obviously his tone changed, you know, when it got into the Sammy Hagar era. You know, he went to more of a period correct tone that was a little more chorusy a lot of times, and you know, it was definitely a different tone from the early stuff. But he didn't get into that. You know, I always call it the Digitech tone. You know, he didn't get into that 80s tone that was like you were talking about earlier. It was just like a buzz saw. And because I was cracking up. There's a show that I've got to go play here in town this coming Tuesday. There's a promoter in town that does this show called Nash Jam, and it's usually like 50 to 100 different players from the kind of Nashville and regional scene here,
and everybody can play.
And everybody jumps up and does 2 or 3 songs. I'm playing on. They contacted me and said, "Hey, we've got this singer that's going to do 4 heart songs. Do you want to play guitar on?" I said, "Sure, sounds like fun." And one of the songs we're getting to do 2 of my favorites. We're doing Magic Man and Barracuda, which are just, you know, you can't argue with those songs, and just great guitar stuff, you know, and Roger Fisher and Howard Leese, you know, awesome. And but one of the songs is one of their like 80s kind of hits.
Yeah.
And man, that I was just in here just shaking my head because the guitar tone is just so, I mean, it's that, like I always call it the 80s Digitech tone. It's just that
almost
fuzzy,
Paradise,
overly processed, you know.
Yeah. Is it almost Paradise? What were their 80s hits that were like, all right, Hart, we'll give you a hall pass because we know you know Barracuda, but damn, almost Paradise.
This one is what's the name of that song? If Looks Could Kill is this one that has this really cheesy guitar tone. But and you know, I mean, no offense to whoever plays.
You know what? Give it a proper tone and call it your own. Screw it.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. That's funny,
though.
Yeah,
it's going to be fun, you know. It'll be fun to jump up there and play those songs and rock them out.
Well, I did notice that when we were talking earlier that you like, you know, Ace Frehley, you know, the 70s and then 90s, and you just like skipped over the 80s. And I did too, man. When the 80s was going on, it was like, this sucks. I'm going to study Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
He had actual tone and could play the shit out of blues. That's my guy. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
You know, and 80s was a little crazy. You know, Miami Vice. We had that.
And, you know, and there's some cool stuff in the 80s, but a lot of it's just, you know, just wasn't my bag. For sure.
Mine either. Isn't it funny that you can go an entire decade and go, man, what's going on?
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, let everybody know where we can find Engines of Ruin and everything you got coming up, that kind of stuff.
Engines of Ruin. Well, you can find us, of course, on Spotify. You can find us on all the streaming platforms. We're on YouTube. Right now, you can find just the songs with the artwork static on YouTube. And
Yeah.
we're also putting out lyric videos, and then we hope to have some actual videos, like full band performance videos at some point in the future, I hope. So,
Yeah.
you can kind of keep posted with that. We've got our own website. You can go in there and get you a hat or a shirt if you want to, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, just kind of all those usual places: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, website. That's the main places to find us. And and I'm not too big. You can actually get on there and directly friend me on Facebook if you'd like to,
Sure.
and keep in touch even with me directly outside of the band thing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you reaching out to us and sending your tracks over. And I'm like, man, this stuff is that's really cool. I really like Even Your Dog's a Bitch. That might be my theme song to take to work this week coming up.
Yeah,
That's
I need to
awesome.
get that one synced into the right, sitcom or
Yeah.
movie or something.
Yeah. Yeah,
That one's got some potential there, I think.
awesome. Well, Mark, we appreciate you coming on, man. And
Hey.
stuff's awesome. Keep it going and keep us in in the loop when you have new stuff coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. We're, the goal is, of course, sometimes we may be a little earlier than that and sometimes a little later than that. We're trying to get a new single out about every 6 to 8 weeks. So that's what we're shooting for, is to
Okay.
constantly have something new coming out to hopefully satisfy our legions of fans,
Yeah,
So,
there you go. I love it. All right. Well, we will catch you on the next episode. And again, thank you for reaching out to us and coming on the show.
hey, I appreciate you having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has. Thanks, man.
Rock on, everybody.
All right. We'll see you.
You're watching the Original Music Podcast. With your host, Raymond Hemms.